Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. Winston Chester is off. He is out of the area. And my name is Stan Kirkland. I'm be your host today, and Ken Paramore will be joining me. Ken and I both have retired from FWC. Glad to be with you today. I do not have the river readings today. I know a lot of people are like to see what the river readings are before they go, but I can just tell you this, both rivers are low. Both the Apalachicola and the Chattahoochee River are low. It's a great time if you like to fish for panfish in the fall, brim, or even bass or catfish. It's a good time to fish for them in the fall. In fact, a friend of mine was telling me he caught some nice catfish recently up in Lake Seminole using, actually of all things, he was using cut bait. But fishing up in Lake Seminole. The tides are brought to us by Kent Forest Lawn Funeral Home. The high tide today, which is October 30th, I should have said that. High tide today is at 10:19 p.m. Low tide is this morning at 8:55 a.m. The tides are terrible if you like to fish early in the day. You'd never want to fish particularly in the inshore. I don't know about offshore, but near shore, inshore fishing, you want to fish on an incoming tide, preferably like to go early during those periods of low light, but the tides are all goofed up. Your best chance today is to fish late this afternoon, just before dark, when that tide's coming in, and again, it'll be high at 10:19. The weather today is brought to us by Gulf Coast Air Conditioning. The weather has been pretty much the same for the last week or so. Pretty mild. A high today of 86 degrees. Thankfully, we're not in the 90s like we were 6 to 8 weeks ago. Low of 57 degrees. Winds out of the north. 5 to 10, very little chance of rain, less than a 10% chance of rain. And with that, we're going to take our first break. Well, welcome back, folks. Thanks for being here. Ken Paramore here on my left. Ken and I both have spent a long career, and most of you know, working with FWC. Ken was in, I was in the public information end of things. Ken was in the law enforcement end and saw a little bit of it all through his career. He molded and shaped lives.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
But anyway, Ken had a lot of people under him, and he managed somehow to survive all of that. But Ken, glad
35 years worth of it.
Yeah, that's a good career. That's a great career. Ken, recently you're the chairman of the local Panhandle Longbeards chapter, and you just had the turkey banquet, correct? Tell us about
August 18th, I think it was. It went pretty good. It seemed like, attendance is not what we've had in the past. Don't think we still recovered from the years of COVID when we weren't able to have one, and it was a lot of work to get a lot of people to come back. It was a good banquet. I can't say it was a bad banquet. It was a good banquet. I would say we had probably I paid for 150 meals. So
wow.
We had food left over, but I would say we probably had 125 people.
Good. Y'all had your food catered this time?
Had our food catered. Actually, JR's Rib Shack.
Wow.
Did our catering. Food was really great, and we had some good auctions and some good raffles, and we netted probably $23,000 to $25,000.
Good.
We grossed obviously over 32 or 4. By the time you get the bills paid, the stuff that comes off the top, and there's a lot of expenses, as you know.
There are a lot of bills that have to be paid.
Yeah.
People don't realize, but I mean, it's everything in the world that you've got to pay. And
Yep.
and this is the chapter is a pass-through organization. You don't bank a ton of money. You know
No.
that money comes in. We raise it. You raise it as a fundraiser for the National Wild Turkey Federation, and he turns around and writes them a check, and that funds National Wild Turkey Federation efforts. But part of it's funded here in Florida. There's things that are done here in Florida under the guise of what is the Florida chapter? It's a Florida chapter.
State
of the
chapter,
State
right.
chapter of the National Wild Turkey
And
Federation.
actually, I've got some information about that. We'll talk about in a minute. But you know, some examples are your venue, your caterer, your auctioneer.
Right.
You have to pay for every gun that's in that room. You get a bill for that people get, even though it's offset by their funds. But by the time you do that math, you strive to do 50%, 51%.
Correct.
Gross, net to gross, or however you want to call it. So we achieved that, but it was tight.
Yeah, and again, the money goes to the National Wild Turkey Federation. Turkey numbers are down in the Southeast generally. I don't know that that's the case here in Florida, but if you follow trends, one of the things that you see is that turkey numbers are down. I talked to somebody last week from the Headland, Alabama area, Gordon, Alabama area, and they were telling me they just don't have birds anymore on their property, and they were, and I was telling this guy, I was in Mariana when I ran into this person, I was telling him, listen, you're not alone. However, Florida is kind of an anomaly, even though we got people, there are tons of people, particularly from Orlando South. Bird numbers have not declined as much, but I said he wanted to know if I knew why. I mean, has anything come out of the early research?
There's so many factors due to weather, predators, loss of habitat is a big one.
Right.
Or habitat that's not managed
Correct.
well enough to support the habitat that they like to live in.
And this is what I was telling the guy the other day. I said, listen, the best thing you can do is to manage your habitat properly. That's what the people of Holmes County did back in the 90s when we brought, as an agency, when Fish and Wildlife brought those turkeys back into Holmes County, is the people got on board and managed that habitat correctly. They did everything you could ask them to do by terms of burning, thinning, and that's what I think is missing a lot of places. Some states now are going, correct me if I'm wrong, they're changing the seasons a little bit.
Bag limits.
And so I don't know whether this is going to make a big difference or
But
not.
a testament to the Holmes County project is now they're under the regular season state rules as the rest of the state.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
And it took how many years?
Well, it was several years, and then there was some pushback because the people loved it, so they didn't want to see it change. But the number of birds is good. It's substantial in Holmes County, and so we're thankful for that. Well, I think we're about to take our second break, and you come back with us. Well, thank you for coming back and being back with us right now. Ken, you were talking about the money that was raised through the recent Wild Turkey Banquet. Where does that money go here in Florida for this coming year? Do you have any kind of allocation of how it be spent?
Well, as you know, every banquet in the nation, when we submit our monies to NWTF, their state boards, NWTF state chapters, they sit down once a year with the monies that they're allotted.
And you're on our state board.
I'm on the Florida State Board,
Right.
yeah. And then they divvy up the monies that are given
Right.
to the states, and it's matched with monies from the Forest Service and FWC
Right.
from turkey stamp purchases. So we met in August, and what happens is, and I've mentioned it on here before, but I'll go over it for new viewers, the FWC biologist and the NWTF biologist in the state get together and they prioritize a list of public lands that need work.
And this is not done on private property.
No private land.
It's done on public areas.
So
right?
when we met in August, we designated and came up with, based on the recommendations from the biologists,
Right.
21 projects throughout the state that will receive monies from everybody's
Correct.
donations for projects in the coming fiscal
Right.
year. And of note, number 5 on this list is Econfina Creek. $20,000 is allotted for sand pine removal. As we go on down the line, Point Washington is going to have some herbicide work, Blackwater herbicide work. The Choctawhatchee River is going to get prescribed burning in the tune of $20,000 worth. The South Fork, Rock Creek area of Blackwater is also going to get
Right.
pine release and herbicide, and pine log is going to get herbicide.
That's a good one for local people, pine log, because it's not that large, but it does get considerable attention.
So the Panhandle really fared well in their public lands on getting monies allotted to help, manage their properties. So that's where that money went to. One more last thing before we get off turkeys, I want to announce that we are going to do, and I don't have any yet, this is a 23 calendar, but we are going to do a calendar fundraiser again this year. I should have some in a week or 2 or 3. And if anybody wants one, I'll be putting it on our Facebook page.
How
And
much are they to?
These will be $50,
Okay.
but we give away a gun a week. A gun
Wow.
a week for 52 weeks.
Wow.
And so it's like $1.25 a day.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way. And a little footnote, of all the calendars, I sold over 60 calendars last year, and I've had 5 winners on ones that I've sold
Wow.
thus
Okay.
far in 23. So
I'm not
the odds
gonna-
are not too bad.
I'm not going to rub your hair, but that's good. That's good odds. That's good odds. All right. Next thing on the agenda, let's talk about something that's not that pleasant, but CWD. There's been an awful lot in the news recently about chronic wasting disease. Back in I guess it was late winter, early spring, there was a CWD positive chronic wasting disease. A positive animal, a doe, picked up killed by a car on the road there just north of Bonifay, I think 6 miles or so south of the Alabama line. Fish and Wildlife has come up with a variety of things, and it's to address and to potentially lessen the problem of chronic wasting disease and it's spreading throughout the region. And is your area where you hunt, are y'all in the CWD area, or are you south of the interstate?
Well, one of my leases is in Calhoun County, so we're good so far.
Yeah.
The other one, I-10, is our northern boundary.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're
across the highway is the zone.
Wow.
So
okay.
we just skated
Well,
so far.
okay. I know Fish and Wildlife there's a variety of things happening. One is in Jackson, Holmes, and Washington counties, they're not removing the bag limit. The bag limit is still 5 animals, but and it's still 3 bucks and 2 does that you as an individual hunter can take, and of course you still have to report those, but they're going to allow you, for open seasons in that area, they're going to allow you to take bucks or does all season long, well, till you fill your 2 does, your 2 doe allocation on your license. So you could do that all season long. You're not restricted to those few antlerless days. That is north of I-10 in that what's called DMU2 or that area.
They also extended antlerless days, the 9th and the 10th of December in Jackson, Holmes, and Washington for the take of antlerless deer. But they all have to be checked on those. Every deer has to be checked.
And I don't have the particulars. I'm sure Winston will have them closer to that time, but there will be check stations that'll be set up, and it is going to be a monumental task. I can't imagine what a task it's going to be. I intend to try to volunteer somehow with the agency to see if they need some, an extra hand. But
I'm glad I'm retired.
well, I know we are retired. I said volunteer.
that would be a nightmare.
It would.
An
It is going to be a
enforcement
nightmare to collect all this, but they're going to have some collection points in these counties. I think another thing, if I'm not mistaken, they have requested that hunters stop feeding deer in those.
In the zone, it's prohibited.
In that zone.
Not requested.
Not requested, it's prohibited.
Yeah.
So you can't. Now, question comes up, people want to know, can I still plant my food plots?
Yes.
You can. You can have your food plots. That's not a problem. But in that affected zone, you've got to refrain from using these either gravity feeders or drop feeders, spin feeders, whatever you want to call them. You can't use those because FWC doesn't want you congregating deer. That's the problem, is this prion disease. It's not a virus, not a bacteria. It's spread by
contact.
Yeah, contact, either where animals chew the food and leave that in the ground, or either animal to animal contact. And this.
But that's only in a zone right now.
Right, that's correct.
And let's pray that the zone doesn't get extended.
Now, we'll tell you this, FWC is collecting hundreds and hundreds of heads. I don't know if it's reached the thousands point, but and this is going to ramp up as the season goes along.
They were picking up roadkill deer.
Yeah.
And having them tested.
And I'm sure officers and biologists would rather do other things than do that, but it's necessary to try to figure out how far this thing has spread. Well, let's go ahead and take this last break right now. Well, welcome back. Thanks for being back for this last segment of the show. Ken, we were talking about CWD. Is there anything that we have missed that you can think that...
Well, we could remind people that snapper, our governor has given us the entire month of November and October as far as Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays go. So, it did close early August, and then we got the fall season, which is Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, every Friday and Saturday and Sunday in October and November. And the downside of that was, what I've found out so far, I've been able to go once in the fall. I went a few times in the summer, but this weather, and every time that, if you're on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it seems like the weather and the wind is blown. And I'm not particularly fond of the boat ramps on weekends anyway. Although this time of year, they're not bad.
Yeah.
But the fish are there, did okay. But I think I did 5, maybe 6 trips.
2 fish bag for snapper per person. Fish have got to be 16 or greater, correct?
Right.
And preferably, you don't want to keep these young fish. You've got to use circle hooks on any of your snapper or grouper. Grouper season is closed right now.
Gag closed.
Gag's closed.
Reds are closed. Trigger open, and it won't be long. I think it'll be closed. So
when you say reds, you're talking
red
about
grouper.
Red grouper,
Yeah.
right? Okay, all right. Yeah. So if you get a chance before the season, the snapper season runs out, take advantage of that. The last thing I was going to mention today is it is a great time if you love to fish for nearshore or inshore species like trout, redfish. I would say flounder, but the flounder season is closed, so you can catch them, but you got to release them. You can't keep them. There's tons of flounder right now in some of our local bays that are migrating, and they're fun to catch. Don't get me wrong, I love catching them, but you got to release them between now and the end of November. So and that allows flounder to migrate offshore. They'll spend the winter in, I don't know, 60, 80, 100 feet or more of water, and they'll spawn, and then they'll come back next spring in March, and really in March and April is when there's kind of a mass exodus. Not all flounder migrate offshore. I actually caught a nice flounder. I was fishing with A.D. Whitehurst a couple of years ago in one of the canals, and it was probably in January. It was cold, very cold. I had waders on, a puffy jacket, and I caught a really nice flounder in a canal, and it just shocked me. And somebody else told me later that not all migrate, but most migrate. But
he might have identified as something else.
he could. I don't know. I'm not going there. But he didn't go offshore. He stuck with the redfish and anything. But one thing you need, if you like to fish and you want to fish, you can use artificial baits, and I brought a couple of different kinds to show you what they are. This is just a grub, and I'll hold this one up right here. It's got a little bit of glitter in it. It's about a 5-inch bait. It is a great bait to use for either trout. You just put a jig head in it like this. You'll put a jig head in it. That is a 1/8 ounce jig head. You'll use that. You can use that. Another color that you can use, same thing, same kind of head, is with a white jig. They're good. My personal preference, though, and those are good. My personal preference is to use a cast net and catch live bait. I will take a bait bucket. I take that cast net. You can buy cast nets anywhere. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Half Hitch, you can get them at Howell. There's probably places I'm not even thinking about that sell cast nets. You get 4-footers, you get 6-footers, you get 8-footers, 10-footers. You can get whatever you want, but you probably need a 3/8 inch mesh cast net for catching bait, whatever size. The thing to do is, if you're not a really accomplished cast netter, is go to YouTube University. That's what my kids call it. Go to YouTube, learn how to throw a cast net, and then when you see these bait, you can cast them. Right now, though, I have to be really careful. You know what is stacked on the shore where I fish? Is pompano. Juvenile pompano.
Oh, wow.
That are about 1 inch to 2 inches long, and you don't want to catch them because, one, it's not legal to use them, but two, those are the fish of the future. They're game fish. So you don't want them, but you have to learn by wear polarized glasses. You can learn what these fish are. So there's a lot of pompano right now in our basin. I'm sure these are fish that were spawned this past spring, probably spring. I don't know the life cycle of the pompano. Do you know when they're spawned? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's in the spring.
Yeah, it's got to be in the spring. But anyway, catch your bait. You can also do this. You can use a cork, and you can actually float. You can throw bait out, and you can catch your bait, and then you can do that. So those are all things you can do. Folks, we're out of time, but we want to thank you again for being with us today, and remember and help your fellow man.
God bless.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.